With his aviators on, traditional sunglasses, Joe Biden coming out, about to address the nation. He looks pretty powerful. He's definitely had his Weetabix. Here he is.
Good morning, good morning. Thank you, please. Thank you. Good to see this cabinet and staff together here. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please.
Well, there is one man who seems to be the happiest in America right now, second to Donald Trump, and that is Joe Biden. This morning he addressed the nation with a big smile on his face.
I know for some people, it's a time for victory, to state the obvious. For others, it's a time of loss. Campaigns are contests of competing visions. The country chooses one or the other. We accept the choice the country made. I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win.
Joe Biden failed in his duty to help the American people. All the while, he was sinking into a potato as his cognitive decline gaslit the nation.
I think also, though, Danica, that he should be remembered for the demise of the Democrats. This was the beginning of their nosedive, that they caused this. So Joe Biden's legacy will be tarnished not just by Donald Trump. I mean, sure, he pretty much ended his political career, but in truth, it wasn't Trump that was his undoing. It was his own undoing. It was the Democrats' demise that caused this. And that's why he will go down, I believe, as one of the worst presidents in American history.
Don't forget all that we accomplished. It's been a historic presidency. Not because I'm president, because what we've done, what you've done. A presidency for all Americans. Much of the work we've done is already being felt by the American people, but the vast majority of it will not be felt over the next 10 years. We have legislation we passed. It's just only now just really kicking in.
We need a great reset, which he positioned as the solution to the world's most urgent issues. The dark reality of Schwab's agenda is detailed in his best-selling book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. His endgame mission is to replace independent governance with a top-down controlled, one world government and a central bank-controlled digital currency. I just would like to highlight what you said about the European Chips Act, because it's an important step to create the physical brain for digitalization and to have it located to a certain extent in Europe. Pour tout ça, on parle de plus qu'on pourra s'implanter, ce sera comme ça. Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables.
For the next version of the glasses, one of the things that I'm pretty excited about, I think we'll start getting some consumer neural interfaces soon. I think that's going to be pretty wild.
Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau.
Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts.
The microchips are already here. The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards.
Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique. On appelle quelqu'un, on n'a même plus le réflexe de devoir prendre un appareil, ça se fait naturellement. La technique continue le corps. Oui, vous parlez, vous dites, je veux maintenant être connecté avec n'importe qui.
And this man wants the digital currency so bad, he can taste it. What exactly is a centralized digital currency? Well, it's a digital form of central bank money that is widely available to the general public. That's the actual definition of it.
With this kind of surveillance, I mean, you watch the big president, the big leader, gives a speech on television. The television could be monitoring you and knowing whether you're angry or not, just by analyzing the cues, the biological cues coming from your body. So people are now watching us online, all over the world. This conversation. Now, maybe even right now, the people who are watching us are being watched and analyzed. And the thing is, it's not just you're now watching this. The thing is, we know that you're watching this, and we also know how you feel. Are you angry about what you hear? Are you frightened? Are you bored? This is the kind of power that Stalin didn't have. When Stalin gave a speech, everybody, of course, clapped their hand and smiled. Now, how do you know what they really think about Stalin? It's very difficult. But in 10 years, the future Stalins of the 21st century, they could be watching the minds, the brains of all the population all the time. And also they will have the computing power to analyze all that. Now you don't need human agents. You don't need human analyzers. You just have a lot of sensors and an AI which analyzes it. And that's it. You have the worst totalitarian regime in history.
World leaders, corporate giants, top academics, they're all coming together in Davos, Switzerland today. It's the start of the 54th World Economic Forum, and security is very tight at the Swiss ski resort as those international elites begin to arrive.
What are we able to keep the positive side from the old order to bring into a new world order, and how can we avoid that new world order becomes like a jungle growing back, and we rather have an order based on international law and the principles that have brought us prosperity and freedom for decades.
It's time to plan the future. Not their futures, your future.
That order seems to not be the order anymore. We are on the way to a new order, so we are between orders.
A new world order. So what will that look like?
Maybe this is the old kind of teacher in me coming out. I think of this a little bit more about a transition of eras rather than a transition of orders, but the two are kind of cousins of one another. The reason I draw the distinction is because I don't think the international order built after 1945 is getting replaced wholesale with some new order. It will obviously evolve as it has evolved multiple times over the decades since 1945. But I do think in a more sharp and distinctive way, we are moving into a new era, and that's what I talked about in my remarks, that we are, the post-Cold War era has come to a close. We're at the start of something new. We have the capacity to shape what that looks like, and at the heart of it will be many of the core principles and core institutions of the existing order, adapted for the challenges that we face today.
It's official. World leaders are planning something huge, something that's set to change the entire world. And when I hear about it, only one word comes to mind: tribulation.
Is it still true in a world where we have the technology to hack human beings and manipulate them like never before, that the customer is always right, that the voter knows best? Or have we gone past this point? The simple ultimate answer that, well, this is what people want and they know what's good for them. Maybe it's no longer the case. That if you have enough data and you have enough computing power, you can understand people better than they understand themselves, and then you can manipulate them in ways which were previously impossible.
Because actually, if you can get people to share a car, you can take out, a lot of cars in the streets. I think it's Singapore where they looked at how they could bring it down to about 40% of the cars if we would use them smarter. And the interesting thing about technology is that it makes sharing easy and fun and not annoying. It used to be a little bit difficult to share. You would have to go in somewhere in the other end of town and get a key. And that's not what you want to do if you want to take your car. But if you can just use your neighbor's car because you have a smartphone and an app and you don't even need to know the neighbor to get into his car, it's much easier and much more fun to share. And you start then thinking completely different about transport and traffic.
If you want the truth, it's not enough to have a technology to produce information. You need institutions that make the effort to separate
reliable information from the of unreliable information.
The world will be richer and, can work less and have more. We will provide an AI doctor. We will provide an AI tutor.
Optimus. It's insane. It's even talking.
Say hi to my friend John.
John? Where's John? Right here.
Oh, hello, John.
How are you? That's crazy. I'm talking to a robot. From San Jose. Probably from where you were born in Silicon Valley.
Wonderful. Where do you live in San Jose? Do you live in Mountain Valley or do you live in the Santa Teresa area?
No, I live in Los Gatos.
Los Gatos. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Nice area.
Where do you live?
Beautiful hiking I hear out there.
There is. Where do you live?
I live in Palo Alto at the current moment.
Figures. Yeah, this is awesome.
That's where they train us, that's where we get our builds, and that's where we work with a wonderful group of people.
What's the hardest thing about being a robot?
Trying to learn how to be as human as you guys are. And that's something I try harder to do every day, and I hope that you will help us become that.
Be honest with the American people about what's going on here. This is political theater. I'm going to call out both sides right here. It's all posturing, it's fake fighting. We all know where it ends up. This is Groundhog Day. I don't care if the Democrat is the speaker or Republican is the speaker, but that's what's going to happen. And in the meantime, it's political theater. We've got it's good theater. We've got great writers. I wish they'd just come up with a new plot. It's the same plot every fiscal year. Why do we always spend at least as much as we did last year, and why do we never cut spending? It's because Democrats want to grow the welfare state, and Republicans want to grow the military-industrial complex. And we're eventually going to get together, and they're both going to go up. I guarantee it. And both parties are just fine letting the bureaucrats do their thing, which should be our thing, according to Article 1, Section 8 in the Constitution. We are empowered with these things. I've sat through now almost 2 years of hearings in this Congress where we've exposed lies at the CDC, shortcuts at the FDA, unconstitutional gun bans at the ATF, over prosecution of January 6ers at the DOJ, targeting common citizens at the FBI, spying by the NSA, illegal mandates for livestock by the USDA, targeting plant vaccine or transgenic plant vaccine at the NSF, and censorship, the censorship industrial complex of which the NSF is part of, automobile kill switch at the DOT. Now, these are all things I think most Democrats are just fine with, this kind of totalitarian state that the bureaucrats are pushing on us. But Republicans at least pretend to be against these things. But what are we going to do this September? We're going to fund every freaking one of those things that we have exposed.
Then I noticed that it was being used as a pretext for something called the Great Reset.
And again, to bring back the World Economic Forum, this is a page on the WEF website. It's the great reset of the global economies and the global political order.
Right. They're very open about it. Okay. And there have been, white papers written in the past about using just this methodology to get everybody behind the globalist agenda, right? Operation, Warp Speed was part of that, And
so then does Trump bear some responsibility for giving Fauci
definitely bears responsibility. My question is, does he really know what's going on, or has he surrounded himself with people that are misleading him about what's going on? I would like to believe that Donald Trump has been misled.
So what's the end game here? I mean, if America...
The end game is world domination. They're going global. That's what it's all about.
Now, there's nothing new to the idea that Satan or Lucifer, or let's call him just the old devil himself, is the prince of this world, and that the rich and the powerful they do his bidding, and they're bad people, and they follow their lowest appetites and their pleasures, and they can be sadistic. And so that's been going on for a long time. Is there something particular about the moment we're living in that says it's actually gotten much worse?
Yes, that is. We've had so many technological advancements that now the technology of surveillance and coercion are such, and these people are so rich they're like black holes gravitating all the money to themselves, that they're unstoppable, okay? And because they're unstoppable, because they actually run everything, okay, we are endangered by them now.
It sounds to me like you're saying we don't live in Schoolhouse Rock, I'm a Bill up on Capitol Hill. We're not living in the republic that a lot of us say that we're living in.
That's correct. We're ruled, basically, the world is globalistic now. It's run by globalists. That's their goal. I mean, that's what global means. We're going global.
It's oligarchic.
Huh?
And it would therefore be oligarchic.
That's absolutely correct. Oligarchic, because very few of them actually exist.
And this is beyond, a U.S. senator. This is beyond the structures.
Those are puppets.
For decades, he has worked on a theory, but if you see what he writes, how much of his cognitive theoretic model of the universe would you understand?
My theory is a mapping or correspondence between the language of thought and the real world.
Act 2, the smart guy.
In 1999, ABC aired a story on Chris. They sent him to a neuropsychologist.
Hello, Chris.
For a standard IQ test, 2 hours of problem solving. His score reported as too high to measure.
The highest individual that I have ever measured in 25 years of doing this.
Experts tell us most people have IQs around 100. College grads average 120. Above 130 qualifies for membership in Mensa. Chris's estimated IQ has been reported at 195. According to statistics, only 1 in 100 million people have a score at that level.
I like to maintain a little bit of modesty because it's healthy to do that. It's not healthy to get a big head.
But from the time he was a little kid, Chris says he knew.
They skipped me a few grades early. So I started suspecting that I was different then.
Despite smiles and photos, Chris explains growing up smart and poor got him beat up in school and at home.
In my family, it was not politically correct to be a genius. My stepfather didn't like, he used to tell me all the time, nobody likes a smart ass.
So he got into bodybuilding to fight back. His name and his work appear in books. He has lots of books and one purpose, which brings us back to Chris's theory.
I can remember asking my grandfather, is there a God?
Now in his 50s, that's what he's been working to prove all along.
And so if you have a theory that you say implies the existence of God, for example, well, you're falling afoul of the scientific method. How can we test for the existence of God?
And it's especially interesting when it comes to you, because you're a guy at the very highest end of the intelligence spectrum, and you've lived the life of a blue-collar guy.
That's right. I wanted meaning in my life. It's like I say, I wanted meaning above all things. You got to make sure, that you decide up front when you're a young man, if you want to accomplish anything, who do you serve? Truth or mammon? Okay, you don't have a choice. You do have a choice, but you can't do both at once. Okay, it's either going to be truth, which is the same as God. I mean, truth and God are to some extent synonymous.
Yeah.
Or it's
good, the true, and beautiful.
Or it's going to be money. And if you choose money, if you choose mammon, then you're going to be serving mammon, who happens to be the globalists at this point, because they control all the wealth and power.
God is outside of time and space.
Well, God distributes over time and space, and there's some left over. Time and space is static. It's a display.
Yeah.
Imagine that you're a little homunculus inside a computer display, like the Matrix, for example, okay? God not only distributes over that, but there's a whole other domain where God exists. And that's the processing domain. That's the non-terminal domain in the CTME. We're in the terminal domain, right? And most physicists, when they try to reason about the terminal domain, they reason under physical confinement. Okay, well, I can only look at physics, and I have to use what I know about physics, what I can observe about physics, to explain everything else that I explain. So they have that kind of explanatory closure going right there.
So the things that people see when they're on psychedelics, I usually write them off and I tell people, you're just hallucinating. But you're saying maybe that's not all it is. They might be seeing something real.
Well, once again, what is reality? Is reality just stuff out there? No. Reality has a mental aspect.
Yep.
right? And once you admit that basically everything has a mental aspect, then of course what's going on in your mind is real. It takes on a kind of reality. It's not the same as physical reality. It is nevertheless real.
Are angels and demons real?
Yes. Yes.
I think so too. Is there a fear that if you take some of these drugs, you might be letting in the wrong guys?
That's a problem, isn't it? And that's a problem that I think a lot of people have encountered. You have to be a certain kind of person to be able to handle these and not be sucked under by them, okay? Because once your mind is, you know, is messed with in that way, something else, you know, it's weakened, you know, you're not exactly in control anymore, something else can come in and grab it. And if you open up that gap that I was talking about, what can come into that gap might not be good for you.
God is real, angels are real, demons are real. Is the devil real?
Oh, yes. Yes, well, it has to be. You know, we were talking about Michael Knowles being surrounded by the medium and, you know, you've got a boundary. Well, God has a boundary too. He's got a very tight boundary. He's perfect. He can't take anything resembling imperfection, right? He can't take it into himself because that would be a contradiction. Okay, so God needs an antithesis in order to be properly defined. What is that antithesis? Anti-God or Satan. So it definitely exists. Now, Satan isn't coherent because, you know, he basically hates existence. Nevertheless, he gains coherence through human beings, through secondary teloirs. But, of course, you know, the elite themselves realize this. They know that that's how the world works. They just want to distract you.
Well, that's such a great way to put it.
Young global leader program, you know. Young global leaders. I mean, everybody's a young global leader, right? I mean, Trudeau, Macron, Merkel, Putin. You know, and the Putin deals, that very much surprised me, but Klaus Schwab is on record. He's on video, in fact, you know, claiming that Vlad Putin is one of his young global leaders. It's a strategy for world domination. It has been for the last 200 years. What has changed?
So when someone like Trump comes along, and he says, I'm not going to fight this political battle along exactly left-right lines or Republican-Democrat, but I'm saying I'm going to stand for the American nation and nationalism generally against globalism. But he managed to get through. He did get elected.
Yes, he did.
Were you a Trump supporter? You don't need to say if you don't.
As a matter of fact, back when people were saying Trump can't read, look at the way he hesitates. You know, he can't. He's got trouble with the teleprompter. The guy can't read. I actually stood up and I said no. I said, I've met Donald Trump and I think his IQ is probably equal to that of the average Harvard professor.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah. I actually stood up for Donald. Of course, I never got anything out of it, but, you know, I thought I was doing, you know, telling people that, you know, basically he is competent. He's a good businessman, you know, and therefore could be good for the country. And I wanted people to understand that.
So how did this guy, and I've asked this to my friends, and I said, how did this guy, who I think was basically on the level and really did at least try to pose a stopping block to the globalism program, how did he ever get elected? How did they let him through?
Well, he was a little bit of a wild card. And Trump is not as easily controlled as some of them are. So he stood up there and he spoke his mind. He's got good instincts in that respect because what he said resonates with what is in the minds of a lot of American citizens. We want to have our own country. We want America to have first. We don't want our borders to be open. We don't want millions of third world migrants coming here every year and displacing us from our own territory. I mean, and Trump actually, he did a good job of enunciating that. That's how he got elected. But I will tell you this, that if people don't act as though they are willing to fight for their own rights, they're going to lose those rights. Founding fathers knew it. You know, it's written right into the Constitution. Okay, if we don't fight for our rights, we're going to lose them. Simple as that.
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.